Talk to us about this. Tom, good morning to you and welcome to AM News.
Pleasure.
Now, first and foremost, what can we expect from this particular summit?
Well, I think what is important is that the United States is taking Africa very seriously. There have been complaints that during Barack Obama's presidency, there was expectations of him that he would be very much an Africa president, but that hasn't happened. He visited Ghana soon after his first inauguration. He visited South Africa and other countries in 2013. But the expectations have not up to now been realized. Now, I think this summit is, you talked about the largest since he took office. I think it's the largest group of African presidents in Washington ever.
Ever?
Yes. So it symbolizes, I think, that the United States is taking Africa seriously as a country that's growing, as a continent that's growing very rapidly and has to be taken account of.
Now, there has been reports of about 50 African countries participating, which will attend the US-Africa Summit. Is it a clear indication, though, that Africa is on top of the agenda and top of the ladder in Washington?
Well, for the moment, yes. For these 4 days, I mean, there are an incredible number of various meetings at various levels, heads of state. There are business forums, there are NGO forums, there are everything you can imagine. Every aspect of international relations is being dealt with in some forum or other. So there are a number of parallel events going on, even events for the first ladies who are accompanying their husbands and so on. I think there's a first opportunity for African countries to make their case, to discuss the issues with the Americans and to be given a sensible, a serious hearing, what their problems are, what their expectations and hopes are.
50 countries, now that is a big number, but there are countries like Zimbabwe, Sudan, Eritrea, Central African Republic that will not be attending the summit. What can we read from this?
Well, the statement they put out was countries in good standing.
What is that? So exactly.
So you can make your own deduction there. Of course, another 3 have fallen out because of the Ebola problem. Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea have also announced that they cannot attend. And of course, they are having their meeting of the World Health Organization on the Ebola problem. So that reduces it even more down to 47.
And that is Sierra Leone and Liberia?
Liberia and Guinea.
And Guinea.
Yes.
And Nigeria will attend?
Nigeria will attend, yeah.
So because that is one of the economic blocks or economic countries
exactly.
that on the African continent. Now, what is likely to be top of the agenda here? Because there's a number of issues in Africa. And what would you think would be top of the agenda?
Well, I think it's the economic one. I think the Americans have been rather slow in getting off the ground in Africa in economic terms. There are many international companies there from America, particularly oil companies, but as we know in South Africa there are many American companies, pharmaceuticals and otherwise. But generally the Chinese have got in much more quickly and much more seriously into Africa, and I think the Americans realize this and they've got to play catch up.
Boko Haram in Nigeria, it's a serious problem. Are we likely to see the US taking a firm stand about this militant group?
They may take a firm stand, but they're not going to send troops in there. They're not sending troops into Ukraine or into Gaza or anywhere else. After the experience in Afghanistan and in Iraq, there's no way that the American voters will agree to their troops going in there. So they may be supportive of the Nigerian government to the extent that they can, but not with military force. You see the disaster that Iraq has become as a result of their involvement a few years ago.
Now, in your view, Tom, will the summit set a legacy on championing the US-Africa investment relations into the future, for the future generation, for that matter?
Yes, I think so. This is one of the main issues, is the economic side, but they're also putting a lot of emphasis on youth. There's even something called the Young African Leaders Initiative, YALI, sounds almost West African somehow, but that they are bringing in 500 young African leaders into the United States to study to gain experience on secondments to companies and so on. So legacy, yes, very much an issue for the future.
Now, this US-Africa summit, is this maybe a game changer because the US are seeing that the Chinese are flooding into Africa?
Absolutely, I think it is. There's a recognition of that the southern countries, whether it's Brazil, Russia, well, Russia's not a southern country, Brazil, China, and India are making inroads in Africa, and the Americans have allowed themselves to be left out up to now, being concerned about other areas of the world. But certainly this is a game changer, as you say, that they are really serious about getting involved in Africa.
Another serious issue, of course, the US government has urged Congress now to intervene and renew the African Growth Opportunity Act. Can we expect AGOA to top the agenda as we speak?
Top the agenda, certainly an important one. Our own Minister of Trade and Industry, Rob Davies, is going there to put the South African case, and I'm sure other African countries will be just as serious about getting it renewed for another 15 years. And the American administration have got to convince the Congress to actually make that renewal, because the way the American government works, it's not the president lays down the law, he's got to consult Congress and get their support as well. And certainly I think when the Congress sees the volume of interest in the United States by all these heads of state and their delegations coming there, they will hopefully be convinced that it's a good idea.
Why is AGOA so important for Africa?
Because it allows African-made goods to enter the United States free of duty. A large part of the motor industry in South Africa is focused on producing motor vehicles which are exported directly to the United States, and they enter the United States free of duty. And there are other products as well, which from various parts of the continent, clothing and so on, that are able to get in there that might not compete if they didn't have duty-free access.
Tom, as always, thank you so much for your time and joining us here on AM News. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you, Elvis.
That was Tom Wheeler. He's an independent international affairs analyst giving us his take on the Africa-US summit. Now, that's your business news this hour.